The man once casually gave 50 yuan to a little boy selling things on the street. He never thought 20 years later that kindness would return when he hit rock bottom. 20 years passed quickly. The once high-spirited man lost everything when his company went bankrupt. To treat his sick wife, he was forced to sell their only house. But at the hospital, when he tried to pay, the nurse impatiently told him the balance was insufficient. He froze in shock. Just yesterday he had told his adopted son to sell the house, so how could there be no money? Just then his adopted son and daughter walked over. He thought they came to help, but when he asked about the money, the son arrogantly said it was with him. The man's heart lit with hope, telling him to go pay immediately, but they coldly refused. The man grew desperate. He never thought the children he raised would be so ungrateful. The son sneered openly, saying he only followed him back then because life looked good with him. But a few years later the company collapsed. He even blamed the man for bringing 20 years of hardship. Now the house money was rightfully his. The wife walked over just then, seeing their cruelty. Her illness relapsed on the spot. Only now did the man realize all his years of sacrifice had led to such an ending. But her illness could not wait. He went everywhere begging for help, thinking of those he had helped before. He knocked on their doors one by one, but they demanded written IOUs. Back then he had trusted them and left no proof. In anger he flipped over their mahjong table, forcing them to repay. But they only grew furious. They shoved him to the ground, saying he must kneel and kowtow if he wanted money. For his wife's sake he knelt in tears, but instead of giving him money, they threw him out onto the street. The mahjong parlor boss finally pitied him and told him his old friend Tony was now a wealthy boss. Surely he would help if asked. But the man's heart sank. Back then Tony had begged him to cover his drunken mistake, but he was only a team leader with no power. He could not help, and Tony had held a grudge ever since. Just then a message arrived. A major corporation invited him to a charity gala. He felt a spark of hope and rushed to the building. He had no idea the corporation's CEO was the very boy he once helped with 50 yuan. In just 20 years, that boy had built his own business empire and had returned home for the sole purpose of finding the man who once helped him. Meanwhile, the secretary called the CEO, reporting a new company offering cooperation. The CEO was not interested at first, until he learned its founder was once a friend of the man. He immediately ordered a meeting and asked the secretary to check who the man loitering outside the building was. At the same time, the adopted son and daughter colluded with Tony, planning to crush the man together. Tony agreed to take them to the corporation. Halfway there, the CEO called Tony, asking if he was once good friends with the man. Tony hesitated too long. The secretary hung up. The siblings began to suspect the CEO was asking about the man. They mocked that he had offended many people in youth. Perhaps the CEO was one of them. Tony suddenly understood and decided to get revenge. So when they met again after 20 years, Tony pretended to be generous, handing him 100,000 in cash. Acting concerned for his sick wife, the man was so moved he nearly cried. Just as he reached for the money, Tony sneered and tossed it into the air, then shoved him hard to the ground, watching him scramble to pick up the notes. Meanwhile, the CEO confirmed the man was indeed the kind stranger from years ago. He rushed out of his office at once to find him,